Project Zomboid has slowly secured itself as one of my favorite games of all time, and given just how robust the modding scene for this game is, it was only a matter of time before I stumbled upon Pepe Peel's Thief expansion, which gives the player 2 all-new abilities, one being absolute invisibility, which sounds incredible, and it is. But that got me thinking, could we pull off a heist and make ourselves a small fortune of $250,000? Hello there friend, Newbornkilik here, welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be playing some Project Zomboid. We'll be going over some of the more nuanced aspects of this mod as the video progresses. I'm making the Zomboids as strong and as durable as possible so that backstabbing and stealth are the main focus of this playthrough. Here are a list of our traits, and please welcome Margaret Cannon. Spawning into our house, the first thing that we are met with would be a very blurry world. What is happening? Oh, it's because I have glasses on that I don't need. Right, I forgot. I have prescription glasses that I don't need. My vision's all blurry and shit. After I was done cosplaying someone with vision problems, I saw that Life and Living was on. Gotta get that sweet, sweet early XP. Interestingly enough, there were absolutely no knives in any of the drawers or cabinets, so we had to settle for a pencil that I managed to find. Pencil. That'll do. I can stab the shit out of somebody with a pencil. Not a particularly good weapon, but since we're backstabbing things anyway, it doesn't really matter, it'll do just fine. We were also able to make a sheet sling bag, as well as the all-important fashion, finding something that was a little bit closer to our special occupation. And with just a little bit of food from the fridge, we were on our way. Moving on to the second house, we can see this invisibility in all of its glory. The previous tenant has no idea that we are currently pilfering their kitchen, but what does this mod actually do? Well, you'll see that we have 2 new buttons on our screen. That'll be the pickpocket option and the stealth option. The stealth button will allow us to go into stealth, the difference being it is a complete invisibility with this mod, which is pretty powerful, while pickpocketing will allow us to steal a random item from a zombie. I don't think it actually has to be anything that they have on their person, so you can get some pretty wacky stuff, and throughout this mod you won't see me using the pickpocket functionality very much. Mostly that's just because I was continuously failing it and my heartbeat would give me away if I stood behind the zombies for too long, so it just wasn't really worth it. And finally, it was time to claim our first kill of the apocalypse. Beautiful. I do have a mod installed for different backstab animations. I just prefer it. I think it's much more snappy and maybe a bit more responsive, which is interesting to say given some of the complaints that I'm going to have later on in the challenge. Things will start picking up here relatively soon, but I thought it was interesting in the first 4 or 5 houses, we still haven't found a single knife. Eventually, we would finally find a kitchen knife and a paring knife, and our roguish adventures could officially start. It was also in that house that I realized that we had found our first gold ring with a beautiful ruby in it. And while I'm not going to go into the valuation of these gems and rings just yet, know that they will be a sizable portion, in fact a great majority of our 250,000. But just to give you a little bit of a taste of how these will be valued, this ruby ring here is worth around $3,500. If you don't like these prices, you can blame some random appraisal service. I just took their history and sort of averaged out all of the gemstones of a similar cut and size, and that was the value that I went with. I wouldn't honestly get too tangled up in the numbers with this one. Things are going to scale quite intensely towards the end of the video. Starting up day 2, we were immediately met with a house alarm. Honestly, with the invisibility, not that big of a deal, but kind of annoying we had to leave our base and neighborhood that we had at least semi-established. Honestly, I was kind of dragging my feet, and I'd say a mass of zombies approaching is a pretty good reason to move on. Moving on to the schoolhouse, we managed to find even more pencils, and a bag, which would allow us to carry more pencils, of course. I guess this is just my John Wick playthrough. You know, the retired murder man that we like. That's a reference to a goofy meme that I liked a handful of years ago.
Come here, dog. I love a live dog.
It still cracks me up every time. But anyway, something that I haven't mentioned yet would be the absolutely gratuitous amount of failed backstabs that I had in the first handful of hours of this playthrough. Yes, I know you're supposed to get in behind them, wait for your character to raise their hand, and then go for the backstab. But my thought is always, if I'm close enough to touch the zomboid, then they're just going to turn around. As it turns out, that's not really the case. You can actually rub all up on them. As long as they don't see or hear you, you're probably fine. But yeah, I'm going to have a pretty hard time with it for a little while. It'll get better later on. I start to get a little bit more confident, as well as my heartbeat stops giving me away. But just know that I was dealing with that fairly regularly. So I want to speak a little bit more about the sort of limitations of this stealth mechanic, because it sounds incredibly broken, and it is, but it is not necessarily as broken as you might think. The only real limitation on this invisibility is a short cooldown. However, because we've essentially min-maxed into being able to stealth for as long as possible, it's not as big of a deal. But if our character gets tired, then all bets are off. It is absolutely vital that we keep our character in tip-top shape. We can still use it while we're tired, but the duration is greatly reduced. I'm not entirely sure, but it seems like sometimes if you're tired, it'll just randomly turn off, or like there's maybe a range on the duration. Again, not entirely sure how it works, but that's a pretty bad variable to be dealing with when you're in the middle of a horde. So while yes, it is an absolutely amazing tool, if not managed properly, or if you get impatient, it will absolutely leave you in a terrible spot. I then went to one of the restaurants and picked through their supplies before it all went bad. Even though at this point it was starting to get a bit late, my character wasn't tired yet, and I wanted to utilize these first few days before the zombie population started to increase. So I decided to scout out the local businesses and see what we had nearby, in which I was able to find our first mark, which would be Sheba Jewelers. But again, as it was starting to get late, I didn't want to go too far on this plan, but we'll keep that in mind for a little bit later. For tonight, because of that house alarm, we need to find and clear out a base while we're tired. Now, one of the things that I mentioned in the last video was that fighting while you're tired is really not an option. Even just the tired mood that we have right now would result in a 50% reduction in all damage that we do. However, this doesn't seem to count at all for backstab damage. I'm pretty sure a backstab zombie is just immediately dead. Well, dead again. Look, I know that's the obvious joke to make, but I genuinely don't know what they're re-dead. No, that's a different thing. Anyway, I hopped the fence and found a relatively quiet house that even just so happened to have an open back door. However, there would be one former resident that we would have to take care of. And this brings up one of the most useful strats that we can employ during our playthrough. You see, whenever we're invisible in stealth, we can actually whisper. We can actually yell if we really want to. The only things that will unstealth us are either us undoing the ability, our character getting too panicked, or any kind of attacking or shoving. You can also be de-stealth if you fail a pickpocket. Pretty much everything else is fair game. It was then time for our character to get some much needed rest. After scavenging around a bit, I noticed that it was starting to get just a little bit too crowded around the house, so I decided to... Well, first I tried to deal with the situation, and then, as it turns out, there were actually more of them than I thought, and I accidentally yelled as well, which was not particularly helpful. After a while, they ended up destroying the door anyway, so I decided to just leave. This would make a good backup stock of food, just in case maybe, I don't know, house fire or something should happen. Of note on this backstab, it was actually probably a really good thing that I failed this. See, if I had gotten the backstab on the first zombie, the zombie on the left, there's a good chance that the zombie on the right would have been able to turn and quickly get an attack on me, so this very well may have saved my life. The fact that this door broke, I didn't really realize how pivotal this exact interaction was at the moment, but a little bit later I would be thinking about it, and yeah, I got really lucky here actually. We ended up establishing a home base across the street, which in retrospect was maybe a little bit short-sighted, but I had my eyes set on that jewelry store and nothing was gonna stop me. Oh, there is no need for that jump scare, buddy. I am the danger. I should be jump scaring you. Well, I've made quite a mess. Gonna close this door here, and it's like it never happened. I then decided to wash my clothes, you know, just a little treat for me. And I realized that the water had already shut off. It hasn't even been the apocalypse for 24 hours. Fantastic news. Luckily, this isn't a long-term survival situation, so not that big of a deal. We have a goal in mind, and it was time to act on it. The next morning, we hit up the pharmacy store nearby Sheba Jewelers for some beta blockers and pain pills, and after that, we went through the arduous process of leading all of the zombies away. Luckily, leading zombies away with this stealth mod is actually quite trivial, but you can put yourself in some pretty nasty situations if you're not very careful. because remember, they can still hear your heartbeat, and your character's heart is absolutely going crazy in the middle of a horde. So the stealth wasn't a foolproof plan, but it ended up working out quite well. Luckily, someone decided to leave the front door wide open for us. We did, however, have one little friend who decided to stop by. It was maybe a little nerve-wracking knowing that at any minute, my stealth could essentially cease working and I would have to deal with these two zombies in the area, but luckily, because our character is in such good shape, isn't stressed, isn't overly panicked with just the two of them around, we were able to utilize our stealth very effectively. Although I really wanted to stop by my base and tally up all of my riches at this point, I decided to make a quick stop at the Knox Bank nearby and sort of think about my next plan. Not really thinking that I was literally standing inside of a bank. A bank where they keep all of the money. A bank? I could break into a bank. That's the most thief thing to do. Rob a bank. I don't have the stuff to rob a bank. That's false. I have a microwave and a fork. I can make it happen. It took me an embarrassingly long amount of time to realize that I, as a thief, could rob a bank. I wasn't entirely sure what would be in the bank vault, but I figured there would be something good for us down there. This would be our next goal, although it would be a tricky one. I'm not overly strong, bashing down the door is not really an option. Finding the zombie that just so happens to have the keys, also not really an option, and all that I know right now is there is a security door in the way to the back. As it turns out, it would end up being significantly more difficult than just this one security door, but for right now, we just need to figure out a way to take care of that door. And at this point, the only other jewelry stores that I could find on the map were in Louisville, which not a particularly good idea. Eventually, we were able to make it back to base and count up our riches, and this haul right here amounts to roughly $84,000, which might be a little bit overinflated, but you know what? It's good enough for the gem appraisers. It's good enough for me. Again, this is just sort of the average price of, these precious gemstones on the current market. Should I have done it in 1990s Kentucky bucks? Probably, but I didn't. Okay, the plan. Roll up, get out of car, place microwave on ground, put fork in, get bit by a zombie. New plan, roll up, become invisible, put down the microwave, put in the fork, set for 60 seconds, enter the bank vault, take treasures, profit. Hopefully I will have some time to get in there and grab the money, / maybe it won't burn the back of the building quite as much. I didn't think this plan through very well, but even as badly as I thought it through, and as bad of an idea as I thought this was going to be, the issues would start immediately.
Get the hell out of my room!
I could not find a microwave in this entire neighborhood. I don't know if these people are just too rich to believe in using a microwave, but in this entire neighborhood, I was confident at least one of them would have a microwave. I searched a large majority of the houses in this area. Any house that I went by, I went in, looked for a microwave. I never found one. Oh, and of course, I was still chronically short on knives. I was using pencils anytime that I could to help preserve some of my more sturdy equipment. Excuse me, sir. They don't have a microwave either. Money? Ooh, fingerless gloves? Hell yeah. That'll complete the look. Oh, we look like a criminal. I mean, we are a criminal. So, checks out. But we also look like one now, too. I'm gonna eat this sausage. And then I'm coming for you, buddy. Getting real tired of that banging. Whoa, 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 hey. Oh, shit, what the fuck? Like, you just pushed the wrong way? What the hell is wrong with you? And it's not looking particularly good. It is a laceration, not the biggest deal, but it is definitely something for us to keep an eye on. I wasn't entirely sure exactly what happened here, but as it turns out, because I was moving my character while targeting this rotation here, I rotated so that the zombie wasn't going to get hit by my push. I mean, this was just an aiming error on my part, but it seems like it's going to have some pretty severe consequences. After a little bit of time, our character would end up becoming queasy. So, this is not good. If you've played this game for any amount of time, you know that that probably means that we are likely infected. And thus, our time seems to be at a premium. So I decided to just full send it. Alright, time to get the lead out. No microwave, don't care. Okay, microwave, no microwave. Love that. Absolutely enamored with that. Is what I would say if I could find a microwave. How do none of these places have microwaves? What is happening? And so I looked for a microwave for a significant amount of time, and bear in mind, of course, this entire time, Project Zomboid shenanigans are happening in the background. These little guys, they're nothing if not unpredictable. Looks like someone else had the same idea I did. I fucking hate this so much. Oh, are you friendly? Maybe he's friendly. You going out the window? You can go out the window, it's fine. Hi, this is awesome. So cool, love the system. Very nice. I'm literally invisible and I can't pull off a decent backstab. That's crazy. I don't know if rounding that corner to that zombie spooked the zombie virus right out of us, but we are no longer queasy. That means we're good to go. We can afford to take it a little bit more carefully. With that said, I then in the next house would immediately get into a rather sticky situation. Oh shit. Okay, hold on. Oh wow, this is not a good scenario. Oh shit. Okay, I can stealth, I stealth. We're fine. Don't mind me, gentlemen. Just gonna pass. Why are there so many in here? Oh my gosh. Holy shit. Woo. After that relatively close call, I decided to just head back to base, sort of regroup, and plan to maybe go to some of the outskirts of town where maybe they wouldn't be able to fit an oven in like a trailer home or something. And my thought was, surely I will find a microwave there. But as if the game knew that I was about to actually accomplish something, it decided to throw the chopper event at me. Although this wasn't actually that bad of a thing, I decided I was going to use the chopper to lure the zombies away from the center of town. This, in theory, would make the bank much more accessible, and hopefully I wouldn't have to deal with too many zombies while I'm trying to burn down the walls. Luckily, the chopper event didn't last more than a couple of hours. I, maybe against my better judgment, decided to go for a really risky refuel, and this was kind of the point when I started to realize that I was getting maybe a little bit too confident in my abilities. I mean, if at any point during this refueling my stealth were to drop, I would have been in pretty big trouble. I checked houses, and I checked houses, and then I checked more houses until finally the inevitability happened and we found a microwave. I'm just absolutely shocked that it took so long, but we have one now. Now we just need to make it back to our base and regroup for our heist of the bank tomorrow. And then something happened that may be one of the luckiest scenarios that I've had in this entire game. Holy shit. Oh my god. It was so close. Oh no. Oh, that could have gone very differently. You see, usually whenever I'm using the stealth, I don't like to use it all willy-nilly. If I do that, I won't have it for a time when I absolutely need it. But for some reason, when rounding this corner, I just decided to hit the stealth button. No real reason. I normally wouldn't do it, but it just kind of felt like a good idea. I'm not saying that I would have died here, but I very likely would have gotten some sort of injury from this zombie, so definitely glad that I had the hunch to just turn on my invisibility for really no reason. Now that we had finally found our microwave, it was finally time to put our plan into action. Although, for some reason, the bank was not nearly as clear as it should have been. I just cleared the zombies out of this area, say, a couple days ago. I guess the chopper must have led them all back. I'm not entirely sure why there's an entire horde of zombies here. At this point, I'm starting to think some of them are just going to be inevitable, and I kind of just need to use this stealth to sort of work around them. And that's exactly what we would do. You see, as I was approaching the back of the bank, I decided to just run a zombie down. And as it turns out, that makes a lot of noise. How did you live that? So it wasn't very long before we had an entire horde outside the back of the bank, but I did notice that apparently that security door got opened. So all of this was completely unnecessary. The helicopter event must have lured someone from down in the vault or in the back room and made them break the door for me, which was not something that I had considered may have happened. I was pretty well set on this microwave plan. Luckily, even with this horde of zombies here, I was able to find a quick moment to stealth up, put down the microwave, put some cutlery in, and light the wall on fire. It wasn't much longer after that we had a flaming horde of zombies out back the bank. We now had a lot of problems, and it would only be a matter of time until those problems started crawling into the bank and burning all of our money. I needed to get into that bank, and even maybe more importantly, I needed to get the zombies in the bank, out of the bank, so they would stop spreading the fire everywhere. If I could get them into the nearby parking lot, then I could keep the fire at bay, but if any of them wandered onto the grass nearby, it was very possible the entire neighborhood was going to go up. So, right then and right there, I made a decision. I have a thing in Project Zomboid where it's generally more important to make a decision very quickly than trying to make the perfect decision and waiting and having even more problems in the future. So I yelled. I would then spend most of the night kiting around a flaming horde of zombies. Now my plan here was to just let them all sort of run themselves out, but keep in mind, if you don't know too well the mechanics of Project Zomboid, if you happen to catch yourself on fire, it's pretty much a death sentence. But it was at that point I kind of started thinking, I've already gotten the jewelry store here. I mean, I wasn't able to get into the back room, but I got what I needed out of it. I was fairly well convinced that I was going to have to go to Louisville. I don't need this town. I want to take as many of these zombies down as I possibly can with this fire. Once I thought I had a sufficient amount of zombies in this parking lot, all on fire and dying slowly, I decided to make my great escape. Since I had the entire group behind me, I was able to just stealth behind a vehicle and wander off to the bank. And finally, we would get to see what our prize could be. And there we saw it. An entire pallet of gold bars. Now, I wasn't entirely sure what a pallet like this would be worth, but I knew that it would almost certainly rocket us past our goal. Problem being, there's yet another security door in the way. It's interesting. I thought I was done with the security doors, but as it turns out, there was a second security door, and at this point I wasn't entirely sure what the best way to manage the situation was, so I took a bit of a break. I then remembered that a house nearby my base actually had a welding torch, and maybe I could use the welding torch on this door. If not, I was at least fairly confident I could use a welding torch on the iron bars next to it, but unfortunately there were no welding masks to be seen, and while it is the apocalypse, safety first, motherfucker. Burning your eyeballs out is probably not a great way to survive the zombie apocalypse, so maybe this is for the best. Which means that it would be a very good idea for us to go to the hardware store. Maybe we could even just find a sledgehammer and completely bypass this door entirely. We managed to make it to the nuts and nails tool store. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to find anything of use there, so I needed a new plan. I even tried getting a couple zombies down there to maybe break the door on their own, but none of them were behaving. And honestly, this is the kind of thing that's going to get me killed. Because yes, I can lure zombies down here relatively okay, but there's only one entry and exit, and if that's blocked off by zombies, not to mention, feasibly there is a situation down in this basement where zombies could have a line of sight of me absolutely everywhere, so I didn't really want to push this too hard. And this was one of those times where every time I would kill one zombie, another one would show up, just wandering down the stairs. And again, this kind of poses a problem. I really can't fight more than one. I can barely fight one. I thought for sure that zombie was going to go over and start hitting that door, and if that were the case, I could just leave and deal with the consequences later. But alas, it was not meant to be. It was at this point, much like Thanos, I decided I would do it myself. I would take the handful of days or whatever that it would take for my noodly armed character to break down that door. Lure the zombies away yet again, and it was time to get to work bashing the door repeatedly. Also, apparently stealth kills are pretty much the loudest sound you can make, which is kind of counterintuitive. Like, you can see here, I stabbed this zombie, and I had double checked there's no zombies looking at me, but then a little bit later, no way you're coming over here. Are you kidding me? For fucking why? what could have possibly happened that would make you want to come over to this direction? So I decided to lure him in and stealth kill him as well. That was apparently a huge mistake. Dude. And just like that, about a quarter of the zombies that I lured away just yesterday had managed to find their way back into the bank. You can see the body pile is getting rather large. So I went back out to the car and lured them away yet again. I need you to understand how difficult these zomboids were being. I would lure them away, the next day they would be right back. Although, as a reward for doing all of this extra crowd work, I managed to find the jewelry store key, meaning that we would be able to get into the back of the jewelry store, simply walk in, unlock the door, and take our spoils, and the spoils were quite significant. I was actually starting to run out of room in my bags because of all the jewelry that we were able to find. Now, if you thought our last haul of 84,000 was pretty good, it was a pretty good haul. The back of this jewelry store awarded us with $185,000 worth of jewelry, which means that in this jewelry store alone, we were able to find the $250,000 that we needed, but I was not happy with this. While yes, the challenge is technically completed, and while the bank almost seemed to be cursed in some way, my greed got the better of me. I wanted those gold bars. I set up a little makeshift barricade, which would end up biting me in the butt a little bit later, but mostly in a quite humorous way. But for right now, it provided safety as we bashed the doors. And then we got tired, and then we bashed the doors some more, and then we had to leave. I had contemplated just sleeping down here on this bench, but we would probably get corpse sickness with all the dead zombies nearby, so I figured I would let my character breathe a little bit. And there was a small detour to some of the farmhouses to see if I could find a welding mask, or even better, a sledgehammer. Wasn't able to find one, but eventually we managed to batter the door enough until finally, even with our noodle arms, the door would give way. And we were able to pick up all 30 of the gold ingots. And I was a little confused as to why they weren't going into my bag. I mean, I figured I would be a little bit overweight, but, probably nothing too bad, right? No, as it turns out, these ingots weighed almost 500 weight. Our carry capacity is 9. The fact that our character hasn't absolutely snapped in half under the sheer weight of these golden bars is insane. But I had all of them in my inventory, and I didn't want to let them go. If I did, I would have to move them all back to my base, like one at a time, if that. I might not even be able to do them one at a time, I'm so weak. Oh, I'm only 487 weight, that's fine. I'm fucking trapped in here. I wasn't gonna ask questions, I was just going to take my riches, but I still needed to get them back to base. And if you remember, I put that barricade up, and some of you may have already figured out the situation of this little puzzle. I generally don't go around hitting things. Usually I do short blunt and not hatchets, which do significantly less damage to doors and other things, so kind of just a bit of ignorance on my part. But I stayed here for about 5 or 6 minutes, just trying to navigate this clearly insurmountable obstacle. Yes, it in fact was as easy as just breaking the table. Not my proudest moment. With that in mind, it was a short stealth mission back to our base. I then decided to just drop all of my gold bars onto the floor, and after a quick appraisal, we found that these gold bars, about $23 million worth of gold. Which means, yeah, I think we're going to be able to make rent. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. It does help me out an awful lot. Thank you so much to all of the supporters on all of the platforms. You're awesome, and you're awesome just for making it to the end of this video. Let me know what challenges you want to see in the future. I'm Newbornkilik, and I will see you in the next one. I'm out.